Hey, good evening and welcome to our webinar this evening on learning how schools are implementing the Equipping Minds Cognitive Development Program successfully. I'm Dr. Carol Brown, the founder of Equipping Minds and the creator of the Equipping Minds Cognitive Development Curriculum. I am so excited to have each of you here. You have hopefully been either using Equipping Minds, you've watched the YouTube training, maybe you've even been through our certification program, as our guest hosts tonight have, Victoria Harris and Rachel Mateau. And Victoria and Rachel are just amazing, and I love talking to them and hearing what's going on in their schools. To give you all a little bit of a background, Rachel is up in Chase County, Kansas, and at an elementary school there. And actually her principal is on as well this evening. So we may be able to hear from him and hear from a principal standpoint what he's seen. But Rachel has been using Equipping Minds the last couple years, and they are doing it in K through sixth grade there. So I can't wait for you to hear from Rachel. And Victoria Harris is down in Tifton, Georgia, at the Providence School of Tifton, which is actually a private classical Christian school. And Victoria became acquainted with Equipping Minds a couple years ago and went through our certification. Her son went through our program and is still doing it. But both ladies also then had their schools go through our professional development training. So those are options as far as how can I get trained. There's our professional development as well as our certification program, which is actually officially coming up here at the end of April. So we're excited to have that already on the schedule. But as we get started tonight, we are going to begin with the questions that you saw us highlighting when you got the information. I think that's why you're here. So I'm going to let Rachel start for us. And Rachel, go ahead and you can unmic, get your mic on, and I've asked them to just share from their heart. Y'all, we did not script this. This is from these ladies' hearts. And if you can just share for us, Rachel, how you all are implementing Equipping Minds in large groups, small groups, individually, just that first basic question.
Okay, sure. I want to apologize. I tell Carol and my principal often, I get so excited. I know that I talk fast, so you can wave me down if I get to going. Equipping Minds has made a huge difference in my teaching. I always knew students that struggled were easy to identify, but it has been so wonderful to be able to offer students something that makes real change in their academic success, not just the data, the numbers that adults care about, but also their confidence level. And when they can engage and they don't get the rolling of their eyes when they have to do intervention and it seems like cumbersome and weighs you down. So I am going to just show you kind of the practical side. When I first had done this, I watched Carol work with my nephew. Actually, my sister had her working with him, and I was able to sit on and in with a lesson with her and got interested. So applying it with my nephew one-on-one was very different for me applying it in a classroom. So there were quite a few steps that went through. When I initially started in my school, I was the only person who did it in my classroom. I started February 11th, 2019, and I had gotten the training and taken it, and then supplies were an issue. I don't know how you guys roll, but sometimes when you have to ask a administrator if you can have funding, it's difficult for them to say yes to something they've never heard of. So I got a grant, thankfully, in Chase County. We have some fantastic donors who help us out. So the supplies, though, became an issue when I had a class of 20 some, So we went with I just wanted to show you the practicalities of, we happened to get these from Follett Book Fairs, and these were just like tubs. And so we kind of just pack some supplies in, and kids use these throughout the day. In a large group, stuff becomes an issue. I don't know how many times I've had to say, please stop throwing the cubes. You can't stack them. No, just like you would at any place. In a small group, and I've done equipping minds in all groups. I've done it one-on-one with a severely behavior need student. I have done it in small groups, like intervention type groups, and then I have done it whole class. Right now at Chase County, we are most of us are using it for a half hour a day, at least with our whole classes. And then I have been implementing it I teach reading, and I teach it as a reading intervention on top of the 30 minutes they already receive. And I do use some of the specific activities set in Stair Cards, which have been huge in my reading comprehension and fluency. So I could go into more detail, but I'll stop there, Carol, and kind of let Victoria have a turn as well.
Yeah, and I wanted you to hit on, Rachel, real quickly. When you're doing it in a large group, for example, I know there's a lot of folks on right now that are very familiar with Equipping Minds. What are some of the Equipping Minds activities you do in the large group? Can you just touch on that for a minute?
I do all of the activities. I mean, there's not one that I would not do with a large group. Now there's some I do more frequently because it's easier. And there's some that with time, for example, the presidents are easy to do because you can project the presidents and it's talking, the stuff is an issue to think about. So depending on my time, if it's a short day, I don't always get out all the stuff. Sometimes kids like certain ones better. And, quite frankly, it's not easy. As you know, it strains the brain. And so especially, I would say the biggest issue that I have in a large group is I have so many different levels. So I have those kids who are getting the answers quickly and easily, or if they're sorting, and then the kids next to them, you can see that frustration level rising. Whereas when I'm in an intervention group of leveled students, it's not as prevalent because I'm right there to help them and they're not feeling that competitive mode. However, in some cases it's good because it does inspire them to try harder. But I would say that probably I wouldn't be afraid to tackle any of the activities in a large group. I just think about it first.
Yeah. And Rachel has been a great resource for everyone as well. And, I think as we have seen, if you've been through training, when we do the training, we do it in a large group. And that you kind of get to see how that rolls. And I think I've seen some videos of Rachel's students, especially when they're doing the animals, they're doing it in unison. So you hear,
it's empowering. It's neat to hear and they feel it. You can kind of get that feeling of we're together doing something good,
Yeah. So, which is really neat. Victoria, I'm going to let you share for a little bit on how you all do your implementation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brown. So, first of all, I want to second pretty much everything that Rachel has said so far. With that, I want to add a couple of things. We actually break ours up into two 15-minute segments where we are completing at least 30 minutes a day, but we typically spend 15 minutes on games in a classroom setting and then a separate 15 minutes later in the day on the workbook. For us, it works because we're able to manage the time that it takes to prepare the materials better when we do it like that. So that's one thing. Secondly, we are a brand new school. We are a first year school in Tifton. And so we do not have the extra resources at this moment to pull 2 students here for a small group or a few students here. While that's ideal, what we do is we have been able to have all of our teachers implementing it, but within those classes, if let's say there are a couple of students who maybe are at a slower pace with it or need some extra direction, if I am teaching it, I will actually pull them to my table, have one on each side of me, maybe even one in the front, and as I am actually saying the prompts, I'll actually use the word next when they are to move to the next topic. Let's say we are alternating color. If you're familiar, we're alternating color and direction on the arrows page. Then I'll actually use the word next to monitor and set the pace for the class. And by doing that, I can actually touch and help the students that need a little extra guidance follow along. So that's something that's been helpful. Something else for us with implementing in the class is that we cover the presidents and even states and capitals, which is something that we've added to it during history. And when we go to the restroom, we have a restroom break, we may do the animals out loud when we're walking down the hall together. Another thing that we do that has been very helpful is in any classroom setting, you have that group that finishes first. There's nothing you can do to change that. And so while they can pull out a book and read, of course, something that we have them do is they get to go choose one of the pages that I rotate in and out. So for example, it may be the numbers page, right? So we actually have 4 to 6 different pages laminated on the walls. And so when they finish, they can go with a partner to tic-tac-toe to do tic-tac-toe on the animals or the presidents per se, or they can go practice their fact sheets doing +1, -1. If it's kindergarten on 0 to 5, if it's, 5th grade, it may be ×2, and then we may even rotate something else in like ×3 where they have to alternate it. And so that has been beneficial to get a little extra time in for us in the classroom. I think those are the only differences. Oh, one more thing that we do is that we actually we used just a basic copy machine, nothing fancy. And we took all of the cards and we blew them up and laminated them to make them classroom size. And that is wonderful because we will divide the class into 2 groups. Even if there's 14 in the class, 2 groups of 7 have 2 different large set cards, and they're actually physically touching the cards and pulling them together, moving them around to make a set rather than only having the small ones to work with. And in that case, there has been less shuffling and throwing of the cards.
Okay, which are some great ideas. Those are fabulous ideas. I love those. How fun to have them go over to the tic-tac-toe board on the wall and do that. And you all have seen in my trainings how I'll have the big giant jumbo playing cards, and there are the big Uno cards as well. And yeah, so blowing up set cards, blowing up blink cards is just a fabulous thing to do. So y'all, everybody's going to be blowing up their cards as well. Another thing I will say that I'll give this example. I have a family that I just recently did some online sessions with, and for the first time ever, I actually did 4 people at one time online. And so one thing that was helpful is we actually did it out loud. So if they're over on the number page, they would say, let's just pretend that they had learned to circle the 1 and X the 2. Then we would say it together, X the 2, circle the 1, 5, 4, circle the 1, 3, 3, 4, circle the 1, X the 2. And so we're actually saying it out loud while we're doing it. And these were, all different levels in this family. And I, was surprised how well that it worked. But it is a lot like you'll hear Victoria and Rachel say that literally the kids will be in the hall saying, I see myself drawing a circle around the bear. I see myself drawing a box around the snake. I see myself drawing an X on the fish, and doing it together. And they really do like saying that together. It's just so much fun. So the next thing I want to hit on is your actual schedule and kind of lesson plan and what that looks like a little bit. You hit on the time frame, the 30 minutes, but just kind of touch on that. And that's something that we can also share later as a resource for those of y'all who like that. Absolutely. Okay, so let's see. Victoria, you want to share a little bit on that?
Sure, absolutely. So that is something that we have gone back and we have actually had to do some trial and error there to figure out what works best for each of our classes. And for our lesson plans, we truly follow what is in the teacher workbook now with every single step. We go straight through there. Now, here's where it changes with our lesson plans. Some days we may do blink first. The opposite day, we may do set first. We typically do not do blink and set both in the same day. Okay. It's honestly the same thing with the deck of cards as well, especially when it comes to alternating number, color, shape, things like that, more so with the younger ones. But we typically do 2 to 3 days a week of each of the different card games. 2 to 3 days a week of tic-tac-toe and extreme memory, alternating those as well. And we are pretty consistent with exercises almost daily, like the arrows and number hunt, vowel hunt, to implement the brown and back as soon as possible. But overall, we just follow step by step what's in the book.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Okay, Rachel.
We do that the same as well. So what we encourage, and for us, especially because I teach multiple grades, and so I do teach my whole group the entire program, then I'm doing intervention. So to keep myself straight, I do just photocopy this step page, and then I kind of date. I'll put like, this is my 4th grade, and I'll write this class, and then I'll just put where I'm at on the steps. And I usually do the sophisticated method of printing off all the steps and taping them together in a long sheet, and I fold it over, and I just keep those for the grades, so I can keep track of where I'm at. As far as timing for us, we're a little different, although I really love the idea of breaking it up into 2 15-minute sections. So I'm thank you for that. We end up right now is I do it for about 35 minutes with my whole group. And then I have an intervention I'm doing for reading. I finally just realized this is what works. And so I threw out the other things that didn't work. And so for our reading intervention, what we do is we have like 5 to 7 minutes every day of set cards. And so my students have had experience with set. They have gone through the steps. So it's not like this is a new introduction to them. Some of my kids are on their 2nd year of this. So I have broken it up into just different activities. So we'll do like rapid naming on Mondays. On one day, we do the 9-card set. We do whole table set, like we call it, where they're finding them. So they somehow are activating that part of their brain. And then we do a set stair picture where we would do the stair cards, and we got those and we put them, we ordered that whole game. And so the kids will work through Aristotle's 10 categories of being, which we love it. I love to hear their discussions with that. And then we apply it directly in the next 10 minutes to reading. So we just have a short stories, and I'm having the kids read those. And at the bottom of every page, they're required, we call it the talking grid, the Aristotle's 10 categories of being, and they have to process what they've read through that. Now, I don't, because I don't have all the time, make them go in the order, but I make them decide why they did it. So on the page, they have to say, okay, I'm going to tell you a place. It's at the dry riverbed. Oh, how is Reba Jo feeling? I think she's scared of the rattlesnake that's right there. So they have to identify the box, but they have to process what they've read and discuss it. And then we call them the blob drawings that Carol has talked about, where they are keeping that image from the stair card. On Fridays, they draw it. And then we also do it for the reading. So they are having to imagine those scenes, and we pick one, and they're having to draw that image in their head. And it's fun to see because some of them imagine it different. We talk about why is that. So I am loving, and this is something we have just implemented as well, pretty new for us, but I am loving that direct concept of what you see in your brain from the stair card and applying it right to reading in that intervention time. So it is exciting.
Yeah, and you came up with something the other day that you showed me, Rachel, that was just phenomenal. And as you touched on it, what they're doing, I've got to share this. They are going in and reading a short passage, like they read one on Thomas Jefferson and the Louisiana Purchase, and then they made a stair card. And so she sent me those pictures of them, and it was not about perfection. It was about learning that content. And for those of y'all who know your presidents, I loved it. They even drew a picture of the chef's son cooking Adams for Jefferson up there, and drew their map of the United States and the Mississippi, and hit on the key dates, and taking those talking points, those 10 categories, and kind of reversing that stair card process. And so that was just so much fun to see those. And I think the kids are having, a great time with that. So wanted to.
They know what to say. That's how it changes things. They know what to say. There's always a couple kids who know what to say, but now everyone knows what to say because of the stair cards. They're figuring it out. Talking grid is life changing in every academic area because it's processing information. So once I figured that out, Carol, and have started to apply that, it's exciting. I love it.
Well, because I think one thing you said, you use that in absolutely every single class.
It's everything. I teach reading, every subject. It's everything.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so great.
Okay, and let's see. Oh, I'm gonna. Okay, Victoria, and I'm gonna let you share for a minute about some of the things that we had talked about, and how it's impacting the students' reading and thinking as well, kind of with not just with the 10 categories, but that has been a significant piece, I think, and love for you to kind of share your thoughts there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we actually use, every teacher has the 10 categories laminated, and they have a copy of it that they are asked to refer to consistently throughout the day. It's new to all of our teachers. It's a new concept. So they are still learning the process of using the 10 categories. But I can tell you that even in a subject like math, especially with word problems,
Wow.
using the 10 categories changes the way the students are able to think about a word problem. Oftentimes, one of the things that is said is, okay, I want you to make a movie in your mind. And then we will go through each talking point, as Rachel says it, which I love. We will go through each talking point, and now the students come to me and say, hey, I made a movie in my mind. Here's how it went. And they'll tell me all of this information with it. Here's another great example, and I didn't share this before, but we even have 2-year-olds using this program. So we have 2- and 3-year-olds. They do the very basics. Okay. The number hunts, just locating the numbers on the line and circling them. We have them doing the blink cards. We have them doing Spot It, and those are daily. I'm going to say probably 15 minutes a day, 3 5-minute segments. And because of that, when they have story time, we're able to ask them questions on the 10 categories. And there are 2-year-olds that can recall all sorts of little pieces of information because they're practicing it throughout the day. So that was one thing that I wanted to share about that, because it was big. Let me just check my notes here and see if there was anything else there. One of the things that I will share as well is, with the 10 categories, we use the presidents. There's the stair cards and the presidents. We use the presidents as our core to teach them how to work through those 10 categories. And so I will have a student pick up something that's brown and say, oh, this reminds me of William Henry Harrison because of the brown hair on the van, or, you know, whatever it may be. So they have these visuals that they're able to hang on to because of that. And that has just helped tremendously with their retention.
Wow. Yeah, that is really exciting. And if y'all have your, you know, teacher workbooks and you are thinking about those 10 categories and need a little refresher, go in there tonight, read them before you go to bed. That's what I'll tell you. And remember, Aristotle came up with these over 2,400 years ago, and they are the foundation for intelligent thinking. And that's probably a difference between when we are working with a student online doing the therapy, and then when you are in a classroom setting and all day long doing comprehension, right? In everything, and seeing how Victoria is bridging that to math and the word problems, and how they're, you know, both of the schools are bridging that for that comprehension is just so exciting to see that. And that's something that, you know, when we might do Equipping Minds one-on-one and train parents, you'll see in the back of the book is that whole classroom connection. So understanding how Equipping Minds then becomes part of your entire day because it influences the way you teach, period. And to hear, yes, that 2-year-olds are doing Equipping Minds
Yes.
as well, which is exciting. Okay, the next thing I want to touch base on is, you know, for our students who have experienced trauma. I think if you are in a school, if you are, you know, private, public, wherever you're at, there's a lot out there on trauma-informed practices. And, you know, whether, I mean, there's so many different things. We have been in contact with some of those groups because of the students we get to work with every day, but even more so in our schools, you're seeing just so much. And whether it's physical trauma, some students have had academic trauma. And that's a real thing. And there's so many different things that can cause that trauma in their lives. And I really would love, I'm going to let Victoria start here to really share just how Equipping Minds helps address that.
Yes, so personal story here to start off with, and that is that we have 3 children. All 3 of our children have had an incredible amount of trauma. 2 of mine were born 6 weeks early and spent their first month in a NICU, which is it brings an incredible amount of trauma itself. And we know that trauma changes the makeup of the brain, even in a situation like that, which oftentimes, if it's not been experienced in any other way, it's easy to just set it on a shelf. To push it to the side. But frankly, that's not the case. I have another child who experienced a different type of trauma, an enormous amount, who is an adopted child. And with that, he came to us with trauma that we did not know existed before we ever met our son. With that, there was academic trauma, there was social trauma, there was emotional trauma all across the board. And when we found Equipping Minds, it was because we wanted to help him cognitively. There were significant cognitive delays, and we wanted to help with that. Equipping Minds seemed to be the only answer that could. With that, the one thing that we noticed that we had no idea was going to happen with Equipping Minds, we knew that it was going to help him with his math. We knew that it was going to help him with his reading. We had no idea that it would help heal the part of the brain that controlled his emotions, his ability to not cry in a half of a second if there was something that didn't go the way he thought that it should go, right? Even something small like that. And I've seen the same thing in a classroom setting. Surprisingly, even in a private classical Christian school, I can safely say that well over 50% of our students have experienced trauma that I'm aware of. So the percentage is probably more than that. With that, I've noticed that in August, they came in struggling to process, struggling to pull out what has already been stored in there, right? And now in January, their processing speed has increased through the roof. These are not students that have cognitive delays. These are students that were struggling because of trauma that had happened in their life prior, that the parents didn't even recognize. And so with that, I've seen emotional stability increase. I have seen processing delays be decreased. I have seen so many different parts of their emotional and social well-being change. And I know that it's changed because of what Equipping Minds has done to help heal their brain. I understand that Equipping Minds is empirically proven to increase verbal, nonverbal, and IQ scores across the board in every person that uses it. But I cannot help but also say that I have no doubt that God placed this program in Dr. Brown's mind intentionally, and there is a special healing that I know personally has come from that. And that is one of the reasons why I feel like it needs to be in every single school across the board. It's not just for the academics, it's for all of the other healing that also comes with it.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Victoria.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. Rachel, I'm going to let you kind of unmute yourself and share from your
Sure.
perspective with your students.
Yeah, well, I will reiterate that. I don't think it's an accident, Dr. Brown, that this program that helps you process information has happened right now, especially in a year where many schools didn't get a finish, any of them actually. And I don't know how your online teaching went, but mine didn't go well. I did not feel effective in the spring, but I did have Equipping Minds. And so we did do some of that. But now as they come back, just like Victoria said, trying to draw from what they have, that's a definite academic trauma. And then what other kind of traumas were they experiencing while they were out of school? With the news the way it is, what student isn't feeling anxiety? So I love it how you said that God brought it to you, because I feel it's so essential, because it is a concrete way to deal with the academic issues and the SEL, especially in our state. I don't know how it is in others, but they are definitely SEL issues are more and more prevalent, and they're wanting you to address those. And what a great concrete way to do so. So I just reiterate that it is solving a lot of those problems for us. And in our school, I could, like I say, go into different examples of some severe behavior needs. And what has been fantastic is the student that I got to work with individually has moved on to the junior high, and they have embraced this, and they came to the training earlier and are working with those students. So it's carrying on. And I just love the way that you don't have to really say much when Equipping Minds gets out there. It just kind of spreads. The people I've known, and even in our district, it's been amazing how it's kind of, the results speak for themselves. And again, I just think the confidence level and even immeasurable impacts of, they do feel good about themselves. So I do think it helps with emotional issues, because suddenly I don't feel like I'm the kid who doesn't know anything and never has the right answer. So, and then when you teach a kid to think about a stair card, and I'm just thinking about even how would these two people feel about that? And then we talk about interpreting situations. We just talked about the other day. If you walk in and your mom has a casserole dish on the floor and she's upset, and then what do you see? And then is it the right time to say, can I go to the park? And then be mad when she doesn't answer you, so relationships get better and it can apply to everything there. So it's been exciting to use it as a tool.
One thing I'm going to touch on real quickly is with the stair cards, you'll see them listed in your workbook. They're on the Equipping Minds website. You've got pictures of them in your book, and there's Stair Junior second edition, and there's also a third edition. So they give you numerous cards, but you can also use, I think, as both schools are doing, other pictures, but you're still following these same principles that are in your workbook. And your students all have, and you have 12 of those stair cards in your Equipping Minds teacher book and student book. But then when you get them, you're going to get, oh my word, way over 100. So you've got those stair cards right there. Usually a school will get maybe one set, possibly two, but then share the cards because they're just so many in the box to be able to share. So I guess you could have one per classroom, but when you're kind of thinking about those and some of the other cards that are in there, and they may have questions on the back, but I think sometimes you all might use those questions, but you also have already been laying the groundwork there.
Carol, I'm going to jump in really quickly because Ava, my daughter got this for a gift. And this is basically the same. Have you ever seen this one? It's science concepts. It's for stair cards. And so then on the back they have but this is all the things she was learning we found in here. She'd been studying trees, and it's a stair card that's science. I didn't even know it existed. She got it for a Christmas present.
Oh, wow. How fun is that?
So it's been fun. I'm sure there's other things like that out there, but we've been excited to know that that's, some state standards in stair cards.
Okay, that's really fun. Now, Rachel, while you're on, I am going to let Rachel talk about some of the things she's done remotely. Some of y'all, Victoria's school has been able to continue to meet in person, but that has not been the case. Rachel's at a public school, and so you've had some interesting ways to do things remotely. If you want to just hit on that.
Sure. Well, I can tell you that last year, before things got strange, over breaks, I didn't want the kids to really lose that, because I'll tell you, I am very convinced that daily time dedicated to Equipping Minds is important. So I can tell the difference when I don't. So in this spring or this past fall, when things have been hard, I've been on quarantine 3 times. It's not as effective when you can do it every day. So last year, I would send home activities, and it would be optional, but I would always give a really good reward if they did it. And so they could do easy things, and we would adapt them. So I'd say, first of all, play games with your family and talk about it. Shuffle cards for fine motor skills. Finger taps were always something that was one of the activities. We would say, use your deck of cards for everything. And I know Carol has a training on that, but you can use the deck of cards. It becomes the number hunt. You lay out 5 cards, and I'm going to have you do that. Most people have a deck of cards on hand. So even if you didn't have a lot of supplies, and that whole idea of using cereal as markers or things like that. So we would do that back then. I'd kind of send it for homework. And then in the spring, we would do some activities like that now. I don't know how you guys are working at your school, but we're doing both. So we are in person, and we have been all year, but we have kids who are remoting in. And the poor little things, it might be I'm here today, but tomorrow I have to quarantine, and I'm going to have to be gone for a month because I don't have it, but my mom does, all these rules. And so it's something they can easily work with because a lot of it is talking, a lot of it is repeating. I can show them through the screen. We've learned a lot of different things about spacing and set cards. We're also blessed to have Mr. Pena, who's on here as well, who has supported us in getting supplies. So now part of their homework is I send home cards. They take them with them so that they can do them and keep fresh on all of that. So that's like in their homework box that we send with them. And we have enough to do that. And it is difficult COVID rules have impacted us a bit because it used to be I would have a table, share the supplies. And at first we weren't sure how to handle the touching, and we tried to divide decks, but you can't really divide a set deck when you need those specific cards. So we're working through all those details, been finding our way, but I feel we're getting it finally, kind of.
Well, and another thing I want you to hit on, Rachel, is the actual hard data that you've been getting.
Yes.
Okay, we were disappointed last year, as you all know. At the end of the year, nobody was able to do testing. And we were so excited about end of year testing at Chase County Elementary up in Kansas because the whole school had been doing it, right? We couldn't wait. And then when really everyone across the US had end of year testing next, you had gotten some data before then, but more recently this year, you have just gotten some data as well. So if you want to
Well, yeah. And so I'll just tell you some specific cases. I had a student last year who was homeschooled for a part of her time, and then she'd come back to school kind of below grade level, about I think it was 2 grade levels below, kind of an unmotivated student. And through a series of events, she hadn't gotten to be with me during intervention time at the beginning of the year. Now we do have 3 times a year benchmark testing. So I had her, she was in my homeroom class, but she was pulled for those times. And in December, I had tested her and she could read, I believe it was 61 words a minute. And I'm sitting here and I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, but she had gone in over 100 by February. And we had done that set all the time with her, changing that fluency. And so after that, it made me totally rethink what I was doing for reading intervention, because continuing the same read a passage and answer questions for comprehension just didn't cut it for me. And so then understanding how Stair worked on that comprehension and text evidence. I mean, we had a wolf in a picture. One of the Stair cards is of a wolf coming out of a hole. And one kid said, he's old. I go, well, why do you think that? What proves that to you? Well, his mustache is white. Oh, that's proof that what you said was correct. You see why you said that. So all of that applies so well. So I changed how we have done interventions. And so since the beginning of the year with my intervention groups, I have done set and Stair consistently. And I have 4th graders who are like blowing my mind. I was telling Carol, and Brock is on here because he's going to have to check me. Did you check the data, Brock? Because they jumped dramatically in comprehension, which to me is the hardest area to jump in. Fluency is easier to gain in them than comprehension. So we're seeing huge gains in comprehension, enough to make me, today the kids are like, well, hey, you have tears in your eyes, Mrs. Mateau. Because we saw that data jump so much. So our test is like 25 questions, and there are 5 passages that have 5 questions each. And I had a little friend who went from 16 right in the September to 23 out of 25 today. So, and he was the one who struggled academically. Fluency is super difficult for him. So I just feel that is humongous gains that we're seeing. Brock, you might want to chime in here. I don't know if you want to.
I'm gonna let in. Oh, no. Sorry. I hit the wrong person. Sorry, Brock.
That's okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure. I was just starting to look at that data that Rachel was telling me about this afternoon, before this call started. So I hadn't been able to see it, but I did see the student that she's talking about, who is a young man who has had a history of struggling. And so sure enough, he's getting really good results. And so it's just encouraging to see. I've got it pulled up, but it's, yeah. I'm kind of new at the whole equipping minds. I talked a little bit a couple of days ago. We were on a Zoom call, and I was telling Dr. Brown and Rachel both that this was something that I was drawn to because of the hard science, the data, and also the worldview that it's founded on. So I thought that this was something that I could really get behind. And then now I'm seeing more and more data, especially from Rachel's class, as she's tracking both the fluency and then also the growth and comprehension and the reading. And then I'm also seeing it in other grade levels. So I'm getting excited about it, and so we're just going to keep pushing and growing it. So
The other thing I'd love for y'all to talk about, and Brock, you may be able to speak on this as well, is how it's impacting classroom management and students' behavior. If you're seeing changes there, I don't know, any of y'all could jump.
Yeah, I will just say that it's huge on even my own classroom management. The simple thing that you do of repeating directions is hugely helpful. And, I think about, I am a fast talker and I get so excited. And sometimes, you'd get on a kid for not doing what you said, but they had that look of, well, I'm not really sure. And so by making myself slow down and have to say, I see you, myself turning to page 31, and then hearing it back, because at the beginning, especially, I would give like 3 directions and they'd be trying to say it and mumble it. And I said, that wasn't well spoken. I apologize. Let me rephrase that. And so it's been fantastic because students want to do what they want to, most of them want to know want to do what you ask them, but some just can't process that fact. And so that whole revelation was great for me in classroom management. And then I love how you said hard is good. Teaching our kids rigor like that, it has been fantastic, because many kids, when they hit that wall, it's frustration and I'm this and I'm that. And I say, no, you're growing. Isn't that great? And so that whole attitude is like, oh, it's good that I can't do it yet, So it has been so empowering as far as confidence for them, and just a great feeling across the classroom of encouragement.
I agree. I completely second that. With the ICU, I even use it in the mornings whenever we have a school-wide assembly. One of the first things that I will say when we finish is, I see 5th grade standing, and one at a time, and they do that. They see themselves do it, and it helps them with that visual memory and visual processing across the board. I'm the head of school, but I'm also currently teaching kindergarten. And when it comes to kindergarten, having them all stand at the same time, having them all understand the next step, when they can repeat it back, I see myself do XYZ, it just helps it flow so much better. And on that, one of the things that I found when it comes to classroom management is that students find it so difficult to ask for help more often than not. And whenever I say, I will help you, raise your hand and I will help you, then they start to choose to raise their hand and know that it's a good thing to ask for help, and that it doesn't mean that there's a problem. So even just that language, I will help you. And sometimes we even allow other students in the class to say that, you need your pencil sharpened, I will help you. And then we get to work together. And so it makes the classroom more joyful, because they're thinking about the language that they are using, because it's the language that they hear coming from their teacher, who's the one that they're supposed to model in the entire school. So, yeah.
Now, I got to visit one of our schools here in Kentucky, and they were doing color code. And one of the boys beside his friend said, now think wisely. And it was just such a sweet way to hear how they were encouraging each other. The other thing we haven't talked about, it happened in one of my sessions today. I was working with a student and we were finishing a session, and we were talking about just equipping minds, and his brother was sitting in the session, and the student just kept saying, "It's just fun. It's just fun." And I want y'all to speak to that, because a couple of things I've heard from schools, and y'all may tell me differently, but some of the teachers will say, "It's my favorite thing to do all day." Okay. I love doing it. And the students, when we get the games out, when we get the worksheets out, they're excited to do it. It's not the rolling of the eyes or, "Oh no," but you're able, I think, the two very widely known books out there, Carol Dweck's work on a growth mindset. It's a great idea to know your brain can change, but you also have to have the tools to change it, which is what we bring. And then Angela Duckworth's book on grit and the importance of grit. Well, the one thing I heard her say in a TED Talk was how important grit is, but I don't know how to teach it. People either have it or they don't. And I think one thing we see with Equipping Minds is there will be students who used to not have confidence, or used to shut down, or when they couldn't do something would fall apart. But now they know that no, hard is good. And hey, no, we're in this together. I will help you. And this means that this is where we're going to get your brain stronger. So to me, it's, I put those things together before I had even read either one of those books. But then when I was like, no, we're just trying to bring those concepts together in just a healthy and encouraging way. So I don't know if you'd have anything to add to that, but
I would like to touch on that. So with that, I will say that it is a lot of fun. And most of the time, the majority of my class agrees that it is a lot of fun. But at first, it can seem daunting. I say that because I've personally experienced it. I'm the type of person that I want to be able to see the end for me to be able to process the beginning and everything in between. And I have a teacher like that as well. And so interesting enough, I have a teacher that wants to see the entire program together to be able to implement it. But then I have another teacher who's willing to take it step by step. The teacher who will take it just step by step from the very beginning enjoys it. It took the other teacher actually practicing it and choosing to take it step by step rather than needing to see the entire picture, which is how I was when I started the program. I dove in with the Roses program with my child and said, okay, I'm going to watch all of the videos. I'm going to understand it fully inside and out. And we didn't do anything for almost a year because I was too overwhelmed. But then when you take it step by step, you get to have fun teaching it. And when you have fun teaching it, the students have fun learning it. And so you're having a class that is a restful class. It's, in a way, it can be a leisurely class, but at the same time, you're working hard, you're working your brain, you're learning perseverance in a classroom setting. And that's something that you don't find often. So as long as you're willing to take it step by step and understand that you don't have to understand the entire program, it really can be so much fun.
mm-hmm.
And I will speak to a little bit. We have done it for a couple of years. So I do have students that are sixth graders now who have done it a while. And I will tell you, they don't always love it because a lot of students aren't used to struggling. And this program brings out areas of weakness that they didn't even realize. And so it's hard. And so, well, I don't want to do it. And when you get down to the bottom of it, it's because I really have to work and I love it. And so we do have a lot of athletes around here, and I'll say, hey, which one of you are going to get very far or much playing time if you're dogging it, and just like anything, the more you apply yourself, the stronger your brain is going to get. It's like a muscle and you're strengthening it. And so we keep persevering through it. And I love what you said about perseverance. It's such a non-threatening way to develop grit, because, and I think it's great for myself. I just love how it's impacted my own mentality. We have a little friend in my 4th grade he got really frustrated because they were doing the sorting 1-on-1, 2-on-2. And, the person at his table could do it better than him. And he was so upset. And a parent there was telling me about it. And I said, isn't it so great that he is experiencing that in this way that is not threatening to him at all? It's a game, and we're going to keep making him do it, and he's going to get over it. He's going to grow. And so I just love that whole idea of putting children through the fire, so to speak, in this fun. What does it matter? Do you get a grade? Are you going to get a bad grade? No, you're just going to do it tomorrow too. So it is so great because it is a non-threatening way to grow and get strengthened in all those really good characteristics is what it is. They're human characteristics that you get to work on. And by the way, it'll also increase your academics, so I just love that wide range that it will help. I do love it. And I would teach it all day. I told Brock last year, I'm like, can I please, if our schedule changes right now, I get to teach it 4 times in the day. I won't get to teach it that many times.
Okay, that's great. Well, I want to thank you all so much for being on this webinar tonight. And as you know, I told you at the beginning, I recorded it. So I'm going to download it, and it will be on the Equipping Minds YouTube channel. So you can go back and listen to Victoria and Rachel and Brock and myself. And I hope you're encouraged by hearing them. I know I get encouraged every time I get to talk to them and hear what's going on in their schools and with their students and even with their parents. And if you missed the Equipping Minds webinar last spring that just used the deck of cards that we did for public schools during COVID, you can see those links on the Equipping Minds shop on the website. The links are there. But thank you for being here. If you are interested in going through certification again or for the first time, that's going to be April 19th through the 21st for level 1, or level 2 is the 21st through 23rd, or some people just decide to do the whole thing. And we still have people that are purchasing last year's conference. It's online, so you can go through that certification at your own pace. So that's there for you. And with COVID and everything, we still are going to do conference online. It's live. Y'all, we had our largest group ever last year. We had over 93 people from over 12 countries and 26 states. And I was really surprised. One of our public school teachers down in Georgia said, gosh, it was so personal. I felt like you were just talking to me. And I really thought being online, it was going to seem impersonal, actually, and it wasn't. So we had great feedback from that. And as you know, it's incredibly interactive. We're actually playing the games. We had some people who had a friend with them, or they brought their kids in when it was game time, so they would have someone to play with. And we've even done that with our professional development, where we have done PD, but you are there with your teachers, and we're able to do that. That's what I did for Victoria's School and for Rachel and Brock's teachers last year. I couldn't make it to Georgia or Kansas, unfortunately, but they were there together, social distancing while I was being zoomed in, and we just had a great time with that. So I think, as you all know, we've been doing Equipping Minds. We'll be coming into our 12th year, but we've been doing online teletherapy for 7 years now. So God truly had us prepared for this. And I am just so excited and honored to have these schools and those of y'all who are also on here listening or who are going to get to see this recording. But you can email me with questions, or if you are just dying to talk more to Victoria or Rachel, let me know and can do some contact information. But once again, hey, go back and read your workbook. And I think everybody's going to be studying their stair cards or the 10 categories tonight. But once again, thank you so much for your heart, because if you are on this call, you are watching here to the end, I know you have a heart to come alongside children and families to truly see them reach that potential that God has for them, for the purposes that He's created them. And you get to be on this journey with them and their families. And it's an honor. It really is. So y'all have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for being here.